Of course. Here's a 900-word introduction in natural, storytelling English for your YouTube video titled, My Neighbor's Unexpected Kindness Took Me by Surprise. You won't believe what happened, including a short disclaimer and following all your instructions. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life experiences. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. Viewer discretion is advised, and this content is suitable for a general audience. I never thought a single knock on my door could change the way I saw my quiet, ordinary neighborhood forever. You know how sometimes you live next to people for years, exchanging polite nods or awkward smiles, never really knowing who they are beyond the fence or hallway wall. That's exactly how it was for me and Mr. Harrison. I mean, we'd been neighbors for almost 7 years, but I could have walked right past him on the street and barely noticed. He was the kind of person you'd describe as polite but distant, a man of few words, always in his own world, usually wearing a brown jacket even in summer. And honestly, I never gave him much thought. Until one evening, when something completely unexpected happened that made me question everything I thought I knew about kindness and about him. That evening started off like any other. I'd just gotten home from work, exhausted, my feet throbbing in my shoes, craving nothing more than to collapse on my couch with a cup of tea. The sun was setting, painting soft orange stripes across the sky, and the air smelled faintly of freshly cut grass. I remember tossing my keys on the table and letting out a sigh, already planning to ignore my buzzing phone and the pile of laundry staring at me from the corner. It was just another Tuesday. Completely ordinary. Or so I thought. I was halfway to the kitchen when I heard the knock. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, and for a split second, I considered pretending I wasn't home. I mean, who knocks on your door at dinner time without texting first these days? But curiosity won. I wiped my hands on my jeans, crossed the living room, and opened the door, only to find Mr. Harrison standing there, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen anyone look in my life. His hair, usually slicked back, was a little messy. His eyes darted over my shoulder, like he was making sure no one else was listening. He even seemed a little out of breath. "Hi, sorry to bother you," he said, his voice cracking just a bit. I need to ask you a favor. A big one." I blinked at him, completely thrown off. Mr. Harrison, asking me for help? This was the man who barely waved back when I said good morning. The man who once spent an entire block party sitting silently in a folding chair, sipping iced tea. I remember feeling my heart beat a little faster, because suddenly it felt like something serious was going on. The way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other made me nervous, like we were about to discuss something forbidden or dangerous. I even glanced down the street, half expecting to see police cars or an ambulance. But there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of sprinklers and the distant bark of a dog. "I'm sorry," I said, frowning, "but are you okay? Do you need help or something?" Mr. Harrison swallowed hard. Then he lowered his voice. Yes. But I can't talk about it out here. Can I come in?" Now, I'm not the type who usually lets strangers, or practically strangers, into my home, especially when they show up out of the blue acting secretive. But there was something in his eyes, a kind of desperation mixed with fear. And before I could talk myself out of it, I stepped back and let him inside. As soon as he crossed the threshold, he seemed to deflate, like the weight of whatever he was carrying was suddenly too much to hold up anymore. He hovered awkwardly near the doorway, glancing at my living room like he'd never been inside someone's house before. I gestured toward the couch, but he shook his head. He kept standing, wringing his hands, until finally he blurted out, "I think someone's following me." The words hung in the air like a sharp chill. I remember blinking at him, trying to process whether I'd heard him right. Following him? I mean, this was Mr. Harrison, who led the most boring, invisible life I could imagine. He didn't even have social media, for crying out loud. Why on earth would anyone be following him? I stammered, What do you mean?" "Like, someone's stalking you. He nodded quickly. Yes. I think they've been watching my house. And I need a place to hide something. Something important. I don't know who else I can trust. And that's when I noticed it, a small, black, velvet pouch he pulled from his jacket pocket. He clutched it like his life depended on it. I couldn't tell what was inside, but the way he held it made my skin prickle. Part of me wanted to ask 1,000 questions right then and there. What was he hiding? Who was following him? And why on earth did he pick me, of all people, to help? But before I could speak, he stepped closer, lowered his voice, and whispered, "Please, just keep this safe for me. And whatever happens, don't open it." My mouth went dry. My mind was racing. Why would he trust me with something so secret? And why did he look so terrified? I stared at the pouch, feeling my pulse in my throat. But before I could decide whether to take it or not, we both froze at the same time because outside, there was the sound of tires screeching to a stop. Headlights flooded my living room window, spilling harsh white light across the floor. Mr. Harrison's eyes went wide with panic, and he grabbed my arm so tightly it almost hurt. He whispered, "It's them. They've found me." And that's when I realized this was no ordinary Tuesday after all. And I was about to be pulled into something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. Of course. Here's the next 800 words continuing your story naturally from where the introduction ended, maintaining the same human, conversational storytelling style, building suspense, adding context, and leaving tension unresolved. For a second, I couldn't move. My brain was stuck between wanting to rush to the window to see who was outside and wanting to hide in the deepest corner of my house. Mr. Harrison's grip on my arm tightened, and I could feel how clammy his palm was, how his fingers trembled. The light from the headlights flickered across his face, making him look older, more worn out than I'd ever noticed before. He whispered again, lower this time, "Please, don't let them know I'm here." "Please." I nodded, although my own heart was hammering so hard I was sure whoever was outside could hear it echoing off the walls. I inched toward the window, careful not to make a sound, and peeked through the curtains. There was a black SUV idling at the curb, its engine rumbling like a low growl. I couldn't see inside. The windows were tinted so dark they looked almost black even under the streetlights. But I thought I saw the outline of someone in the driver's seat, leaning forward as if trying to look at my house. "Who are they?" I whispered, turning back to him. "Mr. Harrison, what is going on?" He shook his head, swallowing so hard his Adam's apple bobbed. "It's better if you don't know. The less you know, the safer you'll be." I almost laughed, even though nothing was funny. "Safe? You just brought someone's secret pouch into my house, and now there's a creepy SUV outside. How am I supposed to be safe?" He looked around like he was making sure the walls themselves weren't listening. Then he said quietly, "I never meant for you to get involved. I've been careful. But I think someone must have followed me when I went out earlier." I lowered my voice. "Followed you from where?" He hesitated. His eyes darted toward the pouch in his hand, then back to me. "I can't tell you everything, but it has to do with my old job. Before I moved here." I blinked. "Your old job? I thought you worked at the hardware store." Mr. Harrison gave a hollow laugh that sounded nothing like the man I thought I knew. "That's just what I do now. But years ago, I worked for, well, let's just say it was a government agency. A part most people don't even know exists." I stared at him, my mouth hanging open. "Are you saying you're some kind of spy?" He flinched. "No, not exactly. I was an analyst. But I got caught up in something bigger than me. I saw things I wasn't supposed to see. And I took something. For insurance." My eyes dropped to the black velvet pouch. "Is that what's in there?" "The insurance." He nodded slowly. "Yes. And I think they finally figured out where I am. They want it back. And if they know I gave it to you." My stomach twisted. "Wait, you said you were followed today. Where did you go?" Mr. Harrison hesitated. "I went to the post office. I needed to mail something to someone I trust. but I think I saw the same SUV circling the block. So I didn't send the package. I came straight home. But when I got here, I noticed a man standing across the street, pretending to look at a map on his phone. He was there for over an hour. That's when I knew it wasn't safe anymore. I couldn't keep it in my house. So I came to you. I threw my hands up. Why me, though? Why not the police? He stared at me, his eyes suddenly filled with sadness. Because I don't know who I can trust anymore. And because you're the only person who's ever been kind to me in this neighborhood. I felt my breath catch. It hit me then how lonely Mr. Harrison must have been all these years, sitting on his porch alone, barely speaking to anyone. And despite how terrified I was, a small piece of me felt sorry for him. But the rest of me was screaming that I wanted no part of this mess. Outside, the SUV's engine revved again. Mr. Harrison glanced toward the window, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. If they come to the door, don't tell them you've seen me. And don't open the pouch, no matter what they say. My mind was spinning. What's in it, Mr. Harrison? I deserve to know if I'm risking my neck for you. His eyes glistened as he whispered, proof. Enough to destroy powerful people. But if the wrong person gets it, it could mean trouble for everyone. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at my door. It wasn't soft or polite this time. It was sharp, demanding. My whole body went rigid. Mr. Harrison grabbed my arm again, eyes wide with panic. Don't answer it, he hissed. But the knocking came again, louder this time, followed by a deep male voice calling, "Ma'am? Open the door. We'd like to ask you a few questions." I froze. My mind was screaming that I should pretend I wasn't home. But the voice outside sounded official. Calm. Like someone used to getting cooperation. I took a shaky breath, torn between wanting to protect Mr. Harrison and wanting this nightmare to be over. Mr. Harrison shook his head violently, eyes wild. Please, don't open it. If they see me here, we're both in danger. Outside, the voice came again, more insistent. Ma'am, we know you're in there. It's important. Please open the door. I looked back at Mr. Harrison, who was backing into the shadows of my hallway, clutching that velvet pouch to his chest like it was the only thing keeping him alive. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me, like the air itself was getting thinner. My hand hovered over the doorknob, my heart slamming so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. And in that moment, I realized that my quiet life, my safe routines, all of it was gone. Because whoever was on the other side of that door was about to change everything forever. Of course. Here's the next 650 words continuing your story seamlessly, keeping the suspense high and deepening conflict and subplots, all in a human, natural storytelling voice. I stood there frozen, one hand hovering over the doorknob, my breath coming in shallow bursts. Another sharp knock rattled the wood. The voice outside called, calmer but firm, "Ma'am, we really need you to open up. It's about your neighbor, Mr. Harrison." At the sound of his name, Mr. Harrison flinched like he'd been struck. He mouthed silently, "Don't." But the fear in his eyes was starting to feel contagious, like static electricity crackling in the air between us. My mind was racing. How did these people know Mr. Harrison was here? Were they listening somehow? Or had someone in the neighborhood seen him come into my house and tipped them off? For the first time, I felt an icy realization crawl up my spine. Maybe we weren't alone in this quiet suburban street. Maybe people were watching us all the time. Another voice joined in outside, this one softer, a woman's voice. "Ma'am, we're just here to make sure everyone's safe. Please open the door." Mr. Harrison hissed, "They're lying. They're not here to help. If they get their hands on that pouch, it's over for me and maybe for you too." I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to calm my hammering heart. "Mr. Harrison, I can't keep pretending no one's home. They'll break down the door." But he shook his head stubbornly. "No. If they come in, they'll search the place. You have to hide this." He thrust the velvet pouch toward me, and for a second I couldn't move. I didn't want to touch it. It felt like touching a live wire. but he pushed it into my hands. It was surprisingly heavy for something so small, and I thought I could feel something solid shifting inside. Papers? A flash drive? Maybe even a piece of jewelry? I wanted to look, desperately. But I also remembered his warning. Outside, the man's voice grew sharper. "Ma'am, we're going to have to force entry if you don't cooperate." Mr. Harrison's eyes were wide, shining in the dim hallway light. "Please, just hide it. Trust me." Before I could argue, he darted into my kitchen and disappeared into the shadows, leaving me clutching the pouch. My thoughts scrambled for a hiding place. I lunged toward the couch, pulled up the cushion, and jammed the pouch into the gap underneath. I'd barely stepped back when the door handle jiggled violently. I swallowed hard and finally called out, "Who are you? Show me some ID." The man's voice replied smoothly, "Homeland Security, ma'am. We need to ask you some questions about Mr. Harrison." Homeland Security. The words sounded official enough to make my knees feel weak, but something in Mr. Harrison's face earlier made me doubt everything. I opened the door a crack, the chain still on. A man in a dark suit stood there, flashing a badge so quickly I barely caught the words, "Federal Agent." A woman stood beside him, her hair tied back in a severe bun, eyes sharp and scanning the interior of my house. "Ma'am," the man said, leaning closer. "Has your neighbor, George Harrison, come to see you tonight?" My throat went dry. The man smelled faintly of cologne and coffee, and he was close enough that I could see a tiny scar under his left eye. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Why do you want to know?" The woman cut in. "Because Mr. Harrison may be in possession of sensitive government materials. They're classified. And very dangerous if they fall into the wrong hands." My pulse pounded so loudly I could barely hear her. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting Mr. Harrison to leap out and shout the truth. But the kitchen was silent. The man peered past me, lowering his voice. "Ma'am, we know he's here. You could be charged with harboring a fugitive if you're hiding him. Is that what you want?" Suddenly, I thought about my job, my normal life, how a single choice could ruin everything. But another part of me remembered how terrified Mr. Harrison looked, how he'd trusted me with something he said could bring down powerful people. What if he was telling the truth? Outside, the black SUV idled, its engine still rumbling. I could see two more figures sitting inside, one of them speaking into a radio. The man reached toward the chain on my door, fingers brushing the metal. "Ma'am, open the door fully, please. We just want to keep you safe." My hand trembled on the chain. I stared at the pouch hidden beneath my couch cushions, feeling the weight of secrets pressing down on me like a stone. I didn't know who to believe anymore. But I was starting to realize that whatever choice I made, there was no going back to the life I had before. Of course. Here's the next 450 words continuing your story, leading right up to the climax without resolving the conflict yet, and keeping the suspense high and human-centered. The man's fingers hovered over the door chain like he was about to snap it off. I could feel the cold metal trembling under my own grip as I held it shut. The woman beside him leaned forward, her eyes laser-focused on mine. "Ma'am, think carefully. If you're hiding him, you're making yourself part of this. You could be risking your freedom. And your safety." I swallowed so hard it hurt. My brain felt like it was splitting in two. Part of me wanted to scream for help, tell them everything, hand over the pouch, and be done with it. But another part of me remembered the fear in Mr. Harrison's voice, the way he'd said people's lives depended on this secret. The man lowered his voice, almost gentle. "Look, we know he's in there. We're not here to hurt anyone. But the longer this goes on, the more dangerous it gets for all of us." My eyes darted past him to the SUV, where I saw someone getting out from the back seat. A tall man in a dark coat stepped into the glow of the street lamp, speaking rapidly into a phone. His eyes flicked toward my house, and I felt my blood run cold. Whoever he was, he didn't look like someone you'd want knocking on your door. Inside my house, the silence felt suffocating. I could practically feel Mr. Harrison's presence hiding somewhere behind me, holding his breath. My throat tightened as I thought about the velvet pouch under my couch cushion. What if the agents were telling the truth, that it was dangerous, that lives were at stake? The woman leaned closer, lowering her voice to a near whisper. Ma'am, he's not who you think he is. Whatever he told you, it's not the full story. He's been on the run for years. People have died because of what he's hiding. Are you ready to risk your life for him? I flinched, shaking my head slightly, but unable to speak. My mind felt like it was wrapped in fog. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the kitchen, a metallic clang, like a pan being knocked off the counter. All three of us froze. The woman's eyes narrowed instantly, and the man's hand darted to the gun at his hip. Is someone else in the house? He demanded. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My pulse thundered in my ears as the man reached for the chain again. Outside, the tall man in the dark coat started striding toward my porch, his face hidden in shadows. And in that moment, I knew that whoever crossed my threshold next would decide everything. Of course. Here's the next 330 words seamlessly continuing your story, introducing a new twist and raising the stakes without resolving the conflict yet, while keeping the tone human and suspenseful. Before I could react, the chain on the door snapped loose under the man's forceful shove. The door flew open, banging against the wall, and both agents surged inside. I stumbled backward, my breath caught in my throat. The woman agent kept one hand near the gun at her hip as she scanned the room, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Where is he? The man barked. I tried to answer, but another noise split the tension, a loud, electronic chirp from the man's radio. A voice crackled through, urgent and strained. Target sighted. Repeat, target sighted. He's headed north on foot. Repeat, Harrison is heading north. My eyes widened. North? Mr. Harrison was still in my kitchen, or at least I thought he was. I spun around, heart slamming in my chest, but the kitchen doorway was empty. The man shouted into his radio, where exactly? We're inside the residence. The voice crackled back, correction. Harrison spotted half a block north. He's carrying a briefcase. A briefcase. My thoughts flew in 1,000 directions. If Mr. Harrison had the velvet pouch hidden in my house, what was he carrying in that briefcase? The woman agent turned on me, her eyes blazing. What else did he leave here? What else did he tell you? I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the tall man in the dark coat stormed through my doorway, flashing another badge, only his didn't say Homeland Security. It said Private Security Services. And he wasn't alone. 2 more men flanked him, wearing earpieces and scanning my house like they owned the place. He fixed me with cold eyes and said, "Ma'am, Mr. Harrison is under our protection. If those agents find him first, none of us are safe." I stared at him, the realization crashing over me that there were even more players in this game than I'd ever imagined, and suddenly, I didn't know who the enemy was anymore. The room spun with voices, commands, and footsteps thudding across my floor. The agents shouted into their radios, demanding backup. The private security team fanned out, one of them heading straight toward my living room like he knew exactly where to look. And me, I stood in the middle of it all, feeling like the walls were caving in. I had no idea who was telling the truth anymore. Then, suddenly, a voice rang out from behind the kitchen. Enough. Everyone froze. Mr. Harrison stepped out slowly, hands raised, eyes tired but steady. In his hand wasn't the pouch or the briefcase, but a small silver flash drive. He looked directly at the woman agent. "You were never here to protect anyone. You just want this. You want to bury what's on it." The private security man stepped forward. "And we want to expose it. Give it to us, George." Harrison stared at them both. "I'm not giving it to either of you." Then, to my complete shock, he walked over to me and placed the flash drive in my hand. "You decide who deserves the truth." Before I could say a word, sirens wailed in the distance. Real police this time. The agents backed off. The private security team slipped away like smoke. Later, alone, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It was full of video files, documents, names, places, evidence of corruption, illegal operations, lies stacked on lies. But just before I clicked to open the first file, I noticed something strange. A folder titled Personal. Inside it was a photo of me, taken from a distance. My stomach dropped, because in that moment, I realized Mr. Harrison hadn't just chosen me at random. I had been watched long before he ever knocked on my door. My fingers hovered over the photo, my pulse thudding in my ears. It was me leaving my house, carrying groceries, completely unaware of whoever had been behind the camera. A chill ran through me as I realized how deeply tangled I'd become in something far bigger than a simple neighborly favor. I sat back, staring at the flash drive on my desk. I kept thinking about Mr. Harrison's words, that I should decide who deserved the truth. Part of me wanted to turn everything over to the police, to wash my hands of secrets and lies. But another part of me, the part that had seen how terrified Mr. Harrison had been, knew this was evidence people were willing to kill for. In the end, I made a single copy of the files and mailed it anonymously to a journalist I trusted, hoping the truth would see daylight without tracing back to me. I smashed the flash drive with a hammer and flushed the pieces down the drain. The police came and went, taking statements, but no one seemed able or willing to explain who the agents really were or who the private security team worked for. Mr. Harrison disappeared again, like a ghost slipping back into the shadows. Sometimes, I still catch myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting that black SUV to be idling at the corner. But life has mostly returned to normal. My neighbor's unexpected kindness turned my world upside down, and I'll never look at the people living beside me the same way again. Because now I know that secrets can hide in the quietest streets, and that even an ordinary day can change everything forever.